What is going on, world? We are back with another episode. Welcome back to the Blue Stable. I'm your host, Culture Shock. I could not be here alone. I got my guys with me tonight. I got Landon and Colts Film Room. Landon, how we doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. Just another lovely week. It's beautiful weather outside. I know it's probably not in Indy. If you're watching this from Indy, it's not beautiful. Where I'm at right now, beautiful weather, sunshine, can't complain. This much closer to football.
Oh yes, absolutely. Colts Film Room. I know you missed us last week, but we missed you for sure. Welcome back. How we doing?
Appreciate it. Same as always. Same old, same old.
Absolutely. Same old, same old. Let's go ahead and hop into it. We got a lot to talk about with you guys. Of course, we're going to get to the breaking news. I know you all want to talk about it. I'm pretty sure you're going to talk about it in the comment section before we get to it, but it's okay. But we got to go ahead and take it a week back. We had our first preseason game, our first look at Colts football. It's not the official look, but it's just the preseason. Get the guys out there, get their reps in, get some football under themselves, and just touch the field a little bit. But it was a good sight to see. We had some ups and downs, some hiccups. The Colts winning last week to play the Denver Broncos. We got to see Bo Nix on the opposite side of the football, and I will say it is the preseason, but he did look a little polished in my opinion. But we're going to go ahead and start with the offensive side for the Colts. Now, of course, Anthony Richardson, Jonathan Taylor, and those guys was out there for maybe like a few reps, not that long. And of course, it was iffy. Colts media took the first few plays out of the offense with Anthony Richardson on the field and just went overreaction. Overreaction, of course, is every Sunday. But listen, this is the preseason. You cannot figure out how he's going to play regular season from the preseason snaps he took. And of course, like he has some moments and highs and lows, but you can't even evaluate it. It's not even possible. But the offensive side, we did see Joe Flacco. We did see the Beam Machine. We did see Goodson and those guys. I'm going to get my guys' thoughts on the offensive side of the football. And of course, we're going to transition to the defensive side. Just their initial reactions of the first preseason game. It's not like a real review, but just their thoughts on how the first game went in their opinion. So we're going to start with Landon. Landon, how did you look at that offensive side of the game?
Um, Preseason. I mean, like you're running just very watered down stuff. Like you're not. I mean, it almost, I don't want to say like it doesn't matter because you want to get guys reps and you want to, it's more for like evaluating like the back end of the team. Like you're not out there like nobody's watching four Anthony Richardson snaps and being like, all right, this is who he is. Like, I mean, I'm sure there's stuff that they'd like to clean up, especially on that first team, just some timing issues, some route running stuff. Like there's little things like that they can kind of look at and be like, okay, we want to kind of clean this stuff up. But as far as like actual performances of guys, it kind of is what it is. You're more so out there just to get guys reps, So there's not really much you can take away from stuff like that. Like you can in like these joint practices, like these are much more important in my opinion than what you're going to see in a preseason game.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I was excited to see the Beam Machine. Of course, we was rooting for him since the second quarter. We was like, please put in Beam, put in Beam. Once he put him in, his first play, he went out, had a big run that got called back for a flag, unfortunately. But I seen enough. I was impressed. He was definitely everything everyone talked about. The hype was there.
He threw a
And he
heck of a
got
touchdown pass.
man, what to Treadwell? It was
Yeah,
a beauty half point pass. Coach
he stood in
Grimble,
that
what was your
pocket.
thoughts? What was your thoughts on the offensive side, or did anybody stand out to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I kind of agree with Landon. Like the preseason's fairly bland, and I'm not like judging a ton to try and fall into the trap of one person like overanalyzing it. Despite my name being Colts Film Room, and that's the kind of content I do. I'm pulled up my charting. Like I had 5 drop back passes. Like there really wasn't a lot of the RPO. The first one was an RPO that was pretty much hitched flat that like was an automatic pull read. One they brought nickel pressure that like it's a give read every single time. So like we really didn't get to see much of Anthony Richardson outside of the 2 third downs to Granson both times. One, obviously, I know me and Landon have both posted about it, but it was the double crossers, part of their overs family, and like, I mean, it's it's on him, it's not on him, whatever. I think in a real game, he probably sees the collision coming and probably takes off and scrambles. That's probably how I kind of looked at it, especially when you saw that pocket play out. There was a lane there. And I think the third one, the second one, which was the shallow cross, like he read it correctly. He just hung on it a little bit late, and I think there's some mechanical issues there. They're going to hold him back. Like it's not. It's. I think you have to somewhat, at least for me, accept that he's probably not going to be a do it by the book guy in terms of his footwork, his mechanics. Even if that does hold him back, because adjusting those parts of his throws for a guy like that can be pretty delicate in terms of at least the coaches that I've talked to, where it's like you don't want to tweak anything too much and then take away the Superman because you altered it a little too much. So there's going to be some of those, especially early on, some of those throws. But outside of the starters, I thought Jelani Woods had a great day. I really don't know where a lot of the hate is coming from. And this, like, a lot of people saying he's going to get, like, he's on the verge of getting cut. Now, while I couldn't find you a tight end that they would cut before Jelani Woods, because I think they like all four of those guys a lot. I tweeted out today, I cannot see a world in which they part ways with someone with that upside, which is what the staff loves, athletic upside, so early. I just don't see it. Can't see it happening. And I also thought he went out there and, like, blocked pretty well. He had a backside C block that Evan Hull scored on. You saw I posted that one. He took Jonah Ellis and blocked on the backside of a run and just basically blocked him out of the entire frame. He obviously had that one corner route that probably walks in for a touchdown if it isn't for just pressure in Sam Ehlinger's face. So I really thought he had an encouraging day when, like, there was probably a lot riding on that performance in terms of getting him back on the field for his first action. I loved Matt Gonzalez. I haven't had a chance to really post about him, but he came in and, like, I thought he held his own. Now, he was rushing against, I wouldn't say that Denver necessarily has waves on waves on waves of NFL pass rush, but just from a confidence standpoint, he looked pretty good. And obviously I liked what I saw from Jason Bean. Like, I posted this one rep. They're in scat protection. So you're getting pressure basically with 5. You're only blocking 5. He's hot off a looper that linebacker loop. So he's hot now. He's got 0, and he just delivers a strike to Treadwell in the back of the end zone. And usually don't see that, like, in terms of playing 0 out that way. Like, you would say, okay, I recognize it's 0, get to the check down. And not that isn't what you should do, but, like, you don't usually see quarterbacks in the red zone versus 0 in their first NFL action deliver a ball like that. So I really liked what I saw from Jason Bean. I think he probably makes this roster some way, whether it's P squad or actually on the 52. So that's kind of my opinion.
Absolutely, he has to make the roster, man. He's just electric, man. Like, the way like I said, from the first snap, like, the crowd went crazy. They was waiting for him to touch the field. Like, he's definitely one of those guys that you want to have out there on the field. Potentially, hopefully, he gets his call. Like, he gets an opportunity to go out there and showcase it. Like, he's definitely gonna have to go out there again, because it looks like they're not going to be playing the starters next game. We can talk about that later. But switching to the defensive side really quick before we hop into the next week. And with the joint practices conversation we're going to talk about. The defensive side, of course, had some controversy to start off with the whole Nick Cross switching off with Dallas Flowers in the end zone. Gus Bradley commented on it and said it was definitely Nick Cross' assignment. Of course, that was controversy everywhere because people thought it was supposed to be a handoff to Dallas Flowers. The defensive side in general, I think, they're showing a few flashes at the beginning. Of course, this is the Broncos. We can't really take away from it. But I think Kenny Moore, reading that pick off the tip drill was an amazing play. Of course, he's out there already in regular season mode. I was impressed by that. And I know you guys are going to talk about it, but Micah Abraham, the guy, he's just athletic freak of nature. Of course, we mentioned him during the draft. But was there any few lights that you've seen from the defensive side that that caught your eye by a few moments? We can start with Coach Finrum, then we're going to transition to Landon.
Yeah, I'll talk about Mike Abraham. after this, but I want to talk about Isaiah Land. I mean, Isaiah Land looked like a freaking beast. Like when Coach Partridge was starting to do interviews basically after getting the job, like he would talk about all the main guys and then he'd mention Isaiah Land in there. And like, this is a guy that I think Ballard loves. I think the front office loves. I think the staff loves. I know it's a deep room, but I pretty much said from this offseason, he's making this team, and he went out and balled too. Now, it's tough sometimes in these preseason settings because you have to grade, and this is why joint practice is king, is because you can go ones versus ones, twos versus twos, threes versus threes, or sometimes the twos and threes don't get rest, but you get the 1v1s. It's tough to tell the quality of competition he was facing, but the one thing I saw from the entire defensive line is that like they have a chance to be really deep. Like Adetomiwa like had a great losing the word for it, but basically had like a double move, a nice little counter. Obviously Latu looked great. Grover came in and the center tried to back block him and he just totally wrecked the play. While I thought the turnover was great from Micah Abraham, I thought the 92.2 from PFF was a little unrealistic in terms of getting people way too excited about him. Like Gus Bradley talked about it too, so I can feel pretty confident in my eyes. There were some coverage busts, and there wasn't that missed tackle in man-to-man coverage he definitely should have made. So I don't think Colts fans think that he's going to make this starting role and now adding to the secondary. That's probably way too unrealistic. I thought on that touchdown, Nick Cross definitely should have been the guy to take it. When you get into I can tell coverage in the red zone. When you get into the goal line, like it's really tough to ID. I mean, obviously the Colts were in zero, but like, especially when they were in nickel too, which you don't typically see it at the red, like in the goal line short yardage. So it's kind of difficult to tell coverage. I would have thought they would have bumped it with just that particular motion that they got. If they locked it, which they did, it's really tough to navigate traffic and get picked on. Like the Colts run that same RPO. Like that's really tough. So I'm glad that people are not just throwing Nick Cross under the bus for that play necessarily, because I think that's the wrong idea. That's a play that the Colts are going to have DBs looking silly on too. It's really tough to navigate traffic because they can't be at the same plane or Nick Cross gets picked. He's definitely trying to communicate something to Dallas Flowers. I don't know what that is, but he was definitely trying to. So I think what Gus Bradley really was trying to say is there shouldn't have been a miscommunication rather than there wasn't, because it sure looks like Nick Cross isn't committing to the motion because he expects someone else to take it. So.
Absolutely, 100%, man. Landon, we're going to transition to you about the controversial play, and if you've seen any bright spots from the defensive side.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like, I wouldn't even really call it like controversial. Which, I mean, it's like Colts Filmer was saying, that's a difficult play. That's tough, and I mean that's league wide too. Like, I mean, if there's one thing defenses hate in the red zone, it's motion. Like you hate it because it's so difficult to defend in that short area of the field. And then you add in the pick plays and all that kind of stuff where guys are just and it's not even just the Colts that run that motion. I would borderline say 75% of the league has that same play in their playbook too. Like that is like a staple, and there's a reason why so many teams run it. It's because it's hard to defend, and I'm kind of the opposite. I think I know they say it shouldn't have been switched off, and I understand that it needs to line up wider and all that to avoid the pick and all that. I get that, but to me, just in my eyes, I think it would have been a lot similar. Like if whatever they were talking, because obviously we don't know what they were talking about on the field, but if they were on the field, if Nick Cross did actually notice the play and tried to communicate that to hand off and stuff, just common sense to me dictates that would probably be a I don't think it's the wrong way to play. I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. Is what I'm say.
The one thing that I also think is worth noting is you're not game planning for these kind of things either.
Yeah.
That's something that you go into the week and it's like, here's how we're taking this motion because they've ran this 2 to 3 times in the goal line. That's their go-to short yardage play. So we're going to check to one string or like whatever they call it to like bump motion with that.
Yeah.
They have their camp rules is what they call it. That's just what they call it. So they probably called this coverage. It's their initial base camp rules. We're going to lock the coverage if we get this motion. And that changes via game plan when you get into the season. We're like, okay, this week we're not going to bump coverages. We're going to lock it. Or this week we're going to lock and we're not going to bump. So that's also another thing that's I thought was worth mentioning, but I just couldn't fit it into a tweet necessarily, where it's like that gets game planned for. Now, is it still really tough to defend? Yeah. Even if they do bump that motion, it's tough because Nick Cross has to be able to do it in a way that he's not going to stop that sit route or that pick route from the inside receiver. So like you can bump that, and then the next thing you know, you're outside leverage on this guy running in, and it's a walk-in touchdown as well. So there's a little bit of that too. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, it's tough, and I think outside of that, I thought Nick Cross actually had a good game out there. There were a few plays that he would probably want back, but overall, I thought he had a strong day. I didn't really think the safeties in general played bad. There were a few decent reps. I mean, from the other cornerbacks as well. I thought Darrell Baker Jr. had a decent day. Really, outside of Dallas Flowers, I thought everybody it was okay day. I mean, it's preseason. I don't know what else.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Isaiah Land was a guy I was wanting to talk about. Pretty much covered everything. Adetomiwa Adebawore, he looked like a stud. He looked like a game wrecker. It's extremely concerning on just base run packages that once Grover Stewart is out of the game, that they somehow find a way to insert Taven Bryan in there and things just fall apart. They had a lot of success.
He's a sub 3 technique. He's going to come in. He's a sub rusher. That's what I think.
I mean, you would think, but that's not how they used him last year either.
Yeah, that's the whole idea of Raekwon Davis is because why is Taven like in the preseason? That's fine because they don't like, hey, you're going in on third down. It's here's the ones, here's the twos. You're playing on everything until the next guy comes, and we'll sub out.
They desperately need Raekwon Davis to get over whatever he needs, and really too, I thought Denver had a little bit of success running, on the outsides as well, as far as setting the edge and stuff like that.
A lot of that to me was some backup linebacker play.
Yeah, I was going to say
linebacker play was tough, and then there's a couple where like some of the DBs have to crack replace better on some of those crack tosses, where it's like you're just giving such a soft edge to some of these guys.
Peyton ran that the whole game too.
Oh yeah, well, I mean they had exactly. I would too, but also they had 2 to 3 runs in for the game. That was one of them.
Yeah.
And, wow, they ran it well. So
yeah, they did a decent job, and we'll see what happens. I'm not overly concerned about anything about the defensive line and linebackers right now. I mean, there's nothing, outside of injury. I think those 2 positions are going to be just fine.
I agree 100%, man. Shout out to my guy, my hero, Grant Stewart, in the linebacker room. Love him. It's the hair, man. I don't know what it is. It's the hair, but Grant Stewart, always been a fan of that guy. But definitely looking forward to those. But for sure, Nick Cross and Darrell Baker had a nice end zone play. Nice play.
Oh, let me give some love to Segun Alubi. We need to talk about him. And then my sleeper, Craig Young, UDFA from Kansas, I think. Dude's a dog. Okay.
Shout out to Mr. Young. We can go ahead and transition to the joint practice now, which was, a controversial thing we can bring up. It's definitely regarding the secondary. I know you guys are going to talk about it. My opinion is really quick on the joint practices. I think, we all probably agree the offense pretty much had a nice outing. The run game, I think, struggled a little bit from what we've heard. But, A.D. Mitchell's out there doing what he does best. Alec Pierce had some nice plays. Evan Hall, I think Anthony Richardson was 50-50. But he has some nice throws, deep balls in the back of the end zone. A few beautiful passes that we've seen from media. So that's a good thing to see for sure. But the defense, for sure, I think has been struggling, especially in the secondary side. We already know the secondary has been struggling. Kyler Murray's been picking them apart. Joe Flacco is Joe Flacco. He's up there in age. I heard he had a pick six day one of the joint practice. Day two, he struggled a little bit as well. Just give me your honest reactions on the joint practices. Of course, we can mention the secondary because Justin Simmons is one of the guys that the Colts fans wanted. He just went to Atlanta, and that pretty much leaves the Colts in the blue again with the scenario of having needed secondary help but not really addressing the issue. Of course, cornerback is still a struggle, but it looks like we're going to be going out there with these guys. Give me your thoughts on the secondary moving forward and just the joint camp practices. We can start with Landon.
Yeah, well, like I feel like a parrot, like a broken record at this point, talking about the secondary. I mean, it's how many episodes in a row has this been where it's like, I don't feel good about the secondary? I mean,
it's been almost 2 years.
Well, no, I mean, I felt good about Stephon Gilmore out there, but yeah, I mean, it's just they went young. My biggest problem is not even necessarily that they need to sign a starter per se, but the depth at those, like the safety and at cornerback, the depth there is just horrendous. Like, and Juju Brents hasn't shown that he's the picture of health. He hasn't been on the field. Julian Blackmon's been injured at least once every year since he's been in the league. He's missed time. It's the set. Like, I mean, that's just the NFL. Like, you're at some point you are going to have to play your fourth cornerback in a game. Like, you're just going to have to do it. And I don't necessarily feel comfortable that if the Colts have to do that, that it's going to be a successful week, especially in a league that throws as much as they do. It's just concerning. So we'll see. This same type of thing has been done now by this regime, at least at certain position groups, almost every single year. Normally it backfires. So I mean, like, we'll see. That's where we're at. We're in wait and see mode for the regular season. My biggest problem, like I said, is just I don't want to get into. I mean, if you look at the first three matchups, I mean, that's some tough quarterbacks and some decent receivers out there. So I don't want to get into week 4, week 5, and we're sitting there like, yeah, this isn't working. We're going to have to make a move because normally at that point you're just out of luck. So I think I'd rather be proactive than reactive. I think that's a good way to phrase it. As far as joint practices go, love joint practices. They're great. Apparently the Colts offense and Anthony Richardson, especially now that he is able to actually run the football in joint practices because he's not going to get leveled. And that's the main difference too with preseason is, I mean, they've made it very clear to him, like he is not to run the football in preseason matchups, which basically handicaps everything that he's great at. So you're not going to see that dynamic Anthony Richardson in preseason, but you have been seeing it in joint practices. And he's been tearing these guys up. The receivers are looking good. A lot of beautiful balls being thrown. An 11-on-11 period, which is almost kind of funny that he seems to struggle a little bit in like the 7-on-7 stuff. And then in 11-on-11, when there's a lot more going on, a lot more to diagnose, like he just locks in and ends up performing like how we hope he performs the rest of this year. So feeling great about that. The defensive line, from what I've heard, has just been absolutely monstrous. Like they're murdering the Cardinals offensive line, which I don't know how great the Cardinals offensive line is going to be this season. So I don't know if that's really saying too much, but it's always great whenever you win, whenever you're expected to win. And we all expect the Colts to have one of the better defensive lines in football this year. Secondary, as we just touched on, they've struggled a little bit. But I'll say this, Arizona's got some good weapons out there. I think Greg Dortch is really underrated. Michael Wilson's a pretty good player. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. is out there. The tight ends out there with Trey McBride. He's, to me, probably one of the better receiving tight ends in football. Kyler can sling it. So, I mean, those are tough matchups for this DB room. Some talented guys out there. So, it's to be expected. So we'll see. I'm curious because I've talked about this till I'm blue in the face. So I'm curious to hear your guys' opinions on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
Justin Simmons first or the joint practices?
Yeah, I'm not even taking on Justin Simmons. He's a
Yeah,
foul.
so you can mention Simmons in the secondary situation, and then you can give your thoughts on the joint practice.
Okay, so Simmons first. I'm done. I'm done after this. This is my last time. Actually, I'm doing a show with Destin after. Definitely going to talk about Justin Simmons. But after today, I'm done. I'm done. Justin Simmons is a great player. 1 year, $8 million, 7.5 guaranteed. That's what it is. Did the Colts have this cap space to do it? Yes. Did they choose to do it? No. Do I think the Colts – have I been saying from the entire time that the Colts have problems in the secondary that far exceed anything that Justin Simmons was going to bring to the team? Yes. I think that if Justin Simmons signed with the Colts that it's like building a Madden franchise and then all is forgiven? Absolutely not. Yeah, it feels great to sub out 74 Nick Cross with 89 Justin Simmons or whatever it is, but that's not how it works really in the NFL. If they're not going to make a move now, it's going to be something minor at this point because I can't see anyone coming available. And then, this defense needs reps together. And that was kind of the biggest thing that I had said earlier in the season. I'm trying to make sense of it. So what's the point of adding someone this late? It's going to be someone that's going to be a depth piece or add some sort of competition. At this point, I think that Gus Bradley, it's going to be kind of a schematic thing now. That's where the focus needs to be. Screw the personnel. The personnel is what it is. This is the choice that they made, and probably inside that building, they've known that this is the choice. Hey, if it works out with Justin Simmons and these guys look absolutely awful, then we'll go make the call. But maybe we like some things that they've done here and there, whatever. I want to see some schematic changes. Right now, I'm not sure if our DBs can handle press coverage. I would like more press coverage because you have a guy like Juju Brents with his arm length. What are you doing not two-hand and jamming? And I think you look back. I'm not going to compare it to all the Hall of Famers on that defense. But I think when you looked at the 2012 Seattle defense with Richard Sherman and Brandon Browner, those were guys, like obviously they had Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas who were Pro Bowlers the year before. They had been a couple of years in the league. Obviously that's going to cover stuff up. They had a front seven that was fantastic at that point. But there was definitely I feel like there was some questions about whether Richard Sherman early in his career and Brandon Browner were they fast enough? Could they handle it? So they made some adjustments. Now offenses have changed a bunch and made defense a lot harder in the last 5 years, 5, 6, 7 years since that. 10 years, actually. What am I talking about? But if you're going to go after Snead, who was the best press corner in all of football last year, and you have a guy like Juju Brents who you drafted to be a press corner, we can't play him 10 yards off in quarters. We just can't. I mean, mix in some quarters. Here we go. Do what you got to do. But you draft Juju Brents to get into the frame, buy some time for the pass rush to get home. So I want to see that. Now, did he absolutely get cooked in press coverage in the joint practice? Absolutely. He just did. I posted about it. But I would rather work with him on that than have a guy like Juju Brents who wasn't the fastest guy in the world, isn't going to carry you 30 yards down the field. Now, can he play off? I don't know. I really haven't seen a lot of Juju Brents. But I think that there's some schematic things, especially regarding press coverage, that might do this Colts team well.
Yeah, I think he's got good instincts and ball skills where you'll see some plays where he makes some plays in off coverage. But I agree, and it's the same thing with Jalen Jones as well. These are both really long, really physical guys, and they've got really good arm length. That's what Chris Ballard drafts when he looks at DBs. Arm length plays a big role if you look at his past history. And to have those type of guys and you're not playing them to their strength, and that's a big thing of what Gus Bradley runs is you basically want to have one guy that erases half of the field. Your cornerback one just locks up one half of the field, and then you're able to rotate everybody else over to covering the other half, and you're basically pick your poison at that point.
In today's NFL, you need one corner that you can handle an X receiver.
Yeah.
Because if you go 3-by-1, now you can play cover 6. and get that guy some help over the top. There are some things you can do bracket-wise to bracket that guy, but you're going to get picked apart on the other side of the field if you don't have a corner that you can trust for 5 to 6 plays a game in 3-by-1 to hold himself one-on-one. And we saw that on the first drive of the Buccaneers game.
Yeah.
Mike Evans goes for an easy bang 8 on Jalen Jones off a 6-man, 7-man pressure package that Jalen Jones had to match him one-on-one. It's just a tough cover. And if you can't have that, you need a corner to have a successful you can do that.
I posted that in our group chat earlier with Marcus. Like, if you're going to run that type of a scheme and that type of a defense, you got to have the horses on the outside to do it. And if you don't, then you're getting cooked consistently. That's just the way it is. And if I don't know if they know yet that they don't have the guys. I don't think anybody knows yet if they have the guys or not. It's not looking promising, but we'll see. But that's kind of what I was saying about being proactive instead of reactive. If you get 4 or 5 weeks into the season or even later and you're realizing like, hey, we don't have the guys to play this type of a defense, then you're kind of scrambling and you're trying to find out kind of like how they did last year where they went, ran a lot more cover 2 and, all these cloud coverages and they're running all this type of stuff. They're just trying to find something that works.
You're trying to hang your hat on something early.
Yeah, exactly.
And the Gus Bradley,
that's where you want to be whenever you're in a playoff push. You don't want to be in that position. And that's just where I've kind of like not understood the approach, I guess, for what they're doing. And maybe it's one of those things where they need, which I also think this is the dumbest thing ever, but it's one of those things where maybe this is a year where we don't think we're at the contender level yet. We think we're on our way, but maybe we're not there. So maybe we need to just get these guys reps, get Anthony Richardson reps. Then we go all in next off season. And
no way.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm just
who said that? That is
no, that's what I'm saying. Like, you're trying. I've seen it on Twitter. But
is that your take? Is that your take or their take?
No, that was their take.
Their take, terrible take.
Yeah, but that's like you're just trying to make sense of it, and like I don't agree because how many more years of DeForest Buckner and Grover? I mean, like these are elite players in their prime who are pushing 30 or past 30. And how many more years are you going to waste?
Let me debunk
trying to find like what you have with these young guys.
Let me debunk this myth quick.
You can't sell that.
If Gus Bradley really sat there, and said, you know what, Chris, I really love the 7th, 6th round corners you've given me. Like, this is awesome, man. Like, thank you. Meanwhile, after week 18, his head coach didn't publicly commit to him. They said they had to talk things through. Now, did he inevitably keep his job? Yes. Did Steichen get up there and immediately commit to him? The headlines would tell you no. So you're either Gus Bradley is a sitting duck, just waiting to get fired and ready to be a scapegoat for Chris Ballard's mistakes, or he's gone in there, fought for the players that he didn't end up getting. They tried to work things out with Snead. Reportedly, they were in on Simmons, whatever. Maybe they made things obviously changed throughout a course of an off season. But like this notion that like, yeah, we're not, it's our first year starter with Anthony Richardson. No.
We need to play the young guys. We need to see what we have.
That is absolutely terrible.
Like, because you can't, and not only that, I mean, like that's a great point as well. But you also can't sell that to a locker room either.
Hell no.
You can't.
Like
guys are not going to buy into that kind of stuff whenever you're sitting there saying, well, I just think we need to see what we have with these young guys before we go all in. Like, you think DeForest Buckner is sitting there being like, yeah, okay, cool. Let me waste another career or another year of my career before we finally decide, that we want to take this seriously. Like, every year is a reset. This Colts team, you have a chance. And I truly believe that. This offense is good enough or will be good enough. You have a chance every single week as long as Anthony Richardson and Shane Steichen are coaching and playing quarterback. And that's all you can ask for. But you're putting so much pressure on the offense right now outscore people, and you just can't do that in the NFL. And maybe, like I said in the last episode, maybe we're sitting back here in January after the Colts win the division, and Juju Brents looks like a bona fide quarterback or corner number one, and Jalen Jones playing well above seventh rounder because Kenny Moore is an undrafted free agent, and look at how great he is. So maybe we keep finding these diamonds in the rough. Maybe it happens.
And this is another thing that's worth pointing out is like, yes, Justin Simmons and all of the quote unquote household names are off the board at this point, but this is where Chris Ballard traditionally feasts, in this area where guys are getting waived. Guys are getting waived. That's how Kenny Moore is a Colt. That's how Trey Sermon, who some people are going to say, oh, that's a mid running back. That's a solid running back too.
He's a
Dog.
Yeah, dog. But like, that's how some of these guys like, and this is where the joy. I wouldn't be surprised if someone from the Cardinals ends up on the Colts this year. And I'll say that because that's how Trey Sermon
every year.
Trey Sermon is a Colt. He balled out in joint practices, right? And that preseason game, and then gets waived by the Eagles. They liked him from when he was a draft candidate, and they brought him in, and that's what happened. And now they really trust him to be a running back too now.
Well, not only that too, but there's obviously a good relationship with Gannon and Steichen, and maybe even some bigger fish, become available that, we've heard that they've been on the trade block, now for a year or two.
Don't say it. Don't say it.
I'm not saying it.
Don't say it.
I'm just saying, nothing like I'm not putting that on the internet. I'm not.
You just put it on the internet.
I didn't.
Be careful. There's 500 people watching.
I did not say a single name.
You just put that on the internet.
I didn't say it. But the point being exactly what you said, which I know, like, I'm probably going to get, hate for copying you again, because that's what I seemingly have been doing recently. What you said is correct. And I completely agree that these teams see a lot more of these guys in joint practices than they do in a preseason game or, on film. They're able to really look at these guys live. And during cut downs, it happens every year, every single year.
If I have to hear a guy's name that rhymes with Luda Laker, I'm going to be beyond. I might delete the account. I'm not.
It'll never. Don't look online.
Yeah,
a lot to, huh?
I already saw it. Don't worry. It's not. It's just not happening. It's just not happening because I'm not even going to. I'm not entertaining it. Trey Sermon looks great.
It'd be fun though. It'd be fun. We'd have something to hang our hat on.
I agree.
Yeah, but I also think the other thing I want to point out too is that when you have a defensive line of this caliber, it does make it a little bit easier. Now, like, especially when you get into, and this is the argument that I totally agree with Chris Ballard, like, and this is why I do like him. People will tell me that I'm a Ballard apologist or whatever. But I do agree that
I'm a Ballard hater and I'm a Ballard apologist. So I've covered all bases.
So, like, I think that the trenches are really worth investing to every year. Like, if you're lying to yourself if you don't think that Chris Ballard is investing into the offensive line and defensive line next year, despite you thinking that they're set for the next 5. It's just they're going to, and they should.
Matters in January.
Go look at the teams that have in the past couple of years that have struggled in the postseason, namely Miami. Has been known to fly around in September and October because they have insane talent on the back end. But when you get into the playoffs, where everyone's body's a little bit broken down, the coverage is tighter, the rush is faster, all these kind of things. It just hasn't panned out for them. And then you look like a team like Kansas City. They did have insane corners, but
they invest heavily in the trenches. Heavily.
Yeah. So like,
and early too. It's not like it's heavily like they're picking, 3 guys in round 4, 5, and 6. I mean, they're investing heavily early on.
So as an overall philosophy, I would much rather that we're talking about the free safety spot being an issue than we are talking about pass rush being an issue.
Yeah, the left tackle,
or even the left tackle. Like,
or even in this, I mean, especially in this defense, the 3 technique. I mean,
I don't want to even think about defense that
not
DeForest
having
Buckner is
DeForest
not on. Yeah, I'm not thinking about that now. So
Absolutely. Hey, look, you guys, the vent session was perfect. This is what I needed, the TED Talk conversation. And a lot of people that's in here
oh, I
need
haven't
to hear
even
this as
vented
well.
yet.
Oh, well, if
I'm
you
not
feel
going
into vent now, you're not going to? All right, cool. So let's
It's
go
not
ahead
good.
and hop into let's hop into this last topic before we get up out of here. Per sources that just came out maybe an hour ago, Joe Flacco would not be playing either with the starters. So we're going to be getting a lot of Bean Machine gameplay for the next game coming up. We did sign a wide receiver, former Eagle Greg Ward, who has familiar chemistry with Shane Steichen, will be added to the Colts roster. The reunion is now in Indy. So that should be an interesting one going up towards the regular season to see where he fits in. Do you guys have any thoughts about Greg Ward being added to the roster? Coach Film, you can go first.
no, I don't have any thoughts, to be
No
honest.
thoughts, right?
It's
Probably just camp body.
Camp body.
It's probably a little bit more than a camp body, probably a little less than your 5th or 6th wide receiver. I mean, with Ethan Fernia going down, I can't believe I'm talking about wide receivers like 6 or 7. But I mean, he certainly has a shot to make the roster. Any player that's going to get signed at this stage has a shot to make it. And especially when you have a relationship with both the offensive coordinator and the head coach, you definitely have a shot to make it. Do I think that people maybe were over exaggerating that move because Greg Ward had a little bit of a name from his time in Philly? Yeah, a little bit probably. I don't think I think kind of like I've talked about, and I didn't see this coming necessarily, but Gould is going and AD Mitchell are going to split time at that F. I didn't really see. When I first tweeted about it, I said, "Well, formationally, they can get any player in the slot." But then there's the F receiver. I didn't think AD like normally with rookies, and Jim Bob Cooter kind of talked about this. Normally with rookies, like you don't want them to transition from X to Z to F, and especially in this system because everything totally changes, and you have to have an high football IQ to be able to handle that. AD Mitchell clearly has that, so I don't think at this point. We'll see.
Oh, my bad. Chris Evans for the Bengals has a torn patellar tendon. He's out for the year.
Dang.
Dude,
I had like 3 tweets in a row that was like Matt Milano went down, Brandon Cooks went down, and like someone else went down. I'm like, wow, it's
everybody on the Vikings went down.
It's joint practice season. But yeah, I don't have much thoughts on Greg Ward. I think we'll see maybe some kickoff. He played a little bit of special teams in Philly, probably less than you would think, but he was a red zone F. So probably just a guy to compete with guys like Tyree Cleveland and DJ Montgomery. So not much there. In terms of Anthony Richardson not starting, I would say I think I'm just going to leave it with this. Let's let Shane Steichen make that call because people on Twitter probably are not in the position to talk about how to develop a quarterback. So I'm just going to leave it there.
Thank you.
The reason, and I can tell you this from experience, that teams probably aren't going to play starters in that second game unless there's an extenuating circumstance. I.e. in Philly right now, they didn't play in the first game because of the rain. They're playing now. The reason is because you need a game to evaluate your 2s and 3s. Like during these joint reps, Jason Bean got 0 reps yesterday. 0 reps. If Anthony Richardson goes out and plays, that's less reps that you're going to get for your 2s and 3s. And in this week 2 game, what you are looking for is who's playing, because if you have a starter out there that's playing significant reps in this game, that's a little bit of a red flag. The second thing that you're looking for is you want a player to pop, because if a player is popping versus the 2s and 3s, because Arizona's likely to play it, it means they're probably capable of hanging with the 1s. So like this is that week. It gives you the controlled environment in a game setting to basically evaluate players. If they can if they're dominating versus 2s and 3s, they're probably going to look really good against the 1. They're probably going to hang with some 1s. So that's what I'm looking for on both sides. And then I'm also probably going to watch a little bit of the Cardinals because, again, when you get that joint practice, and we'll see it again in Cincy, you'll see a lot of those moves get made really as we get towards cutdown day, where like the Indianapolis Colts might have some Arizona Cardinals and Cincinnati Bengals on their roster.
Yeah. And just to go back to the joint practice too, I don't think people even realize, maybe people that are there, but like, I don't think people realize just how intense these joint practice sessions are for the teams. Like they like, and maybe it's just because like they're not actually out there tackling and hitting as hard. They don't think it is, but this is. I mean, they go all out for 2 straight days. Like this is balls to the wall, 100%. You're giving it your all. You're just not hitting people. And to play them on Saturday, that's what, like 3 games. That would literally be the exact same thing as playing 3 games in 4 days. And you don't want your starters doing that. You want to minimize the risk of injury for those guys as well. So I agree with kind of like how they're approaching it. Very similar to how they did last year as well. And they didn't play the week of the joint practices because these joint practices are very intense sessions. They're giving these guys some rest. I think they only have 1 joint practice with the Bengals next week, and they're probably going to take it a little bit easier. It'll probably be a little bit of a lighter joint practice per se. And then you're playing your starters basically a full half, maybe even 1 series in the third quarter, just to finally get ready for the game in week 1. And they'll probably even start throwing. I mean, they're not going to throw their full offense out there, but they'll probably work on some stuff that they've got planned with Houston a little bit. Probably not a lot, but they'll iron out some stuff and get prepared for week 1 after this next preseason game. So I agree with it. I think it's a good strategy, and we'll see how they come out.
We definitely will see. I need some gold and beam machine action for this game since we know Flacco's not playing. Hey, man, it's going to be exciting for me to watch. I don't know about you guys, but I'm looking forward for a show. Of course, I don't want nobody to win or lose, rise, but I'm looking forward for some entertainment. But did you guys have any more thoughts before we get up out of here?
No. I got it all off my chest. No one talked to me about Justin Simmons ever again.
This is why we did it. So this could be your last time. Yeah, exactly. I swear I will never mention it again. I promise. Pinky promise.
Or Luda Laker. I don't want to talk about him either.
The only person that starts with an L we're talking about is Latu. It's the only person we're going to be mentioning. But that's pretty much all we got for you guys. We appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight. That is Landon. This is Colts Room. This is Culture Shock. We'll be back with you next week or the week after. But you guys stay tuned. We're going to have the spaces with Destin Adams and Colts Room. They're going to be doing it on the X app. So you guys tune in on the X app. I'm definitely
I will be tuning in.
Retweeting everything. Landon's going to be tuning in as well.
Get ready to give your thoughts because we're probably.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
I just did an hour. Come on.
Yeah. So did I.
It's going to be interesting. But you guys tune into that on the X app. But we appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight. We will see you guys when we see you.